Hi, I'm Stefan from Mix66 and this is the second video of the video series Real Drums vs Programmed Drums. In this video we will take a look at how I recorded the drums and then how I edited them. This video is not only interesting for the comparison between real versus programmed drums, but also on how you can edit your drum performances in Reaper. But before we jump into Reaper to see the editing process, let's take a look at what I have used to record this drum cover of Bring Me the Horizon's Happy Song. So let's take a look at what we have got here. We have a DS Drums drum kit from Italy. It is a 22 by 20 inch kick drum, a 12 by 8 rack tom, and a 16 by 14 floor tom. Inside the kick drum we have a Shure Beta 91A microphone, and on the outside, right where the porthole is, we have a Sennheiser MD421. The snare is also a DS Drums 14 by 8, so a really deep maple snare drum. We have an Audix i5 on top and a biodynamic TG57. Both the kick mics and the snare mics are going into a Audient mic pre, and all of the mic pre's are going into a RME converter. On the toms we have an Audix D4 for the rack tom and an Audix D6 for the floor tom. Hi-hat and splash microphone we have a Rode NT5. The hi-hat is a Sabian AA medium head 14 inch. The stack is a Murat Diril 12 inch mini China with a UFIP 10 inch splash underneath. The ride is this very loud Baiste Alpha Power Ride 20 inch, and the crash is a Murat Diril Rock Series Power Crash 18 inch. So the cymbals are very loud. We will hear them later in the overheads. The overheads are fairly cheap T-Bone RB500 ribbon mics, but they are doing a great job on drum overheads. By the way, all the other mics except for snare and kick are going into a Focusrite Claret Octopre. The room mic is not in the same room as the drums, it is in the hallway. So here we have a beautiful Neumann SM69 stereo microphone in a Bloomline configuration in the hallway leading to the drum room. On the snare I'm using a Remo Ambassador X coated head on the better side and an Ambassador snare on the snare side. Toms are Remo Emperor Clear on the better side and Evans G1 on the resonant side. Kick drum is a Remo Power Stroke. It is Mapex branded from my old kit. And a Remo Ambassador on the resonant side. And this is a cheap Gibraltar kick pedal. And now let's take a listen to the raw drum recordings. So here are all the tracks of the drum recording. There is no processing going on, so it's just the raw tracks coming out of the preamp with some volume adjustments just to have a nice balance. And now let's listen to them. Before we start editing, a little trick that I want to tell you. When I'm done recording drums, I always record some samples of each shell and also of each cymbal. So if there is a mistake that I made during the recording, which I'm not able to edit correctly, I can take one of these samples, copy them over and recreate the correct drum pattern. I start with slow hits and then go faster and then back slow. For example, let's see how I have done this with the floor tom. Here I also had to hold the microphone because the D6 is too heavy for the tom mic holder from Audix. Then I did the same for rack tom. Then also for the snare, the same thing, first with rim shots. And then with normal hits with the right hand. And then of course all the cymbals as well. And also the kick drum. So now that you have seen my approach to this drum recording, let's take a look at my editing process in Reaper. So here we have the recording of the drums. Let's have a quick listen to it. I have also added the video of me recording the drums, so I have also a visual to it. Let's have a listen to how the drums sound straight out of the preamp. So here's everything at 0. This is how the drums were recorded.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Now what I like to do when editing, I select all my drums and first of all I make a group of them, a editing group. In Reaper you do this by pressing the G button, and now you can see here is the group icon and all these tracks are now linked together. So if I make a cut and move them, they move all together even though I selected only one track. And what I like to do is to normalize them. So the volume of every single track is maxed out, and in Reaper I do this by clicking Shift, Command and N. Now every track is normalized.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And of course it is way louder. Let's have a quick listen to each single microphone. The kick out was a Sennheiser MD421 in front of the porthole of the kick. Kick in a Shure Beta 91A inside the kick drum. As you can hear, the kick out has more punch and more low end. The kick in has a lot of attack. Snare top, the Audix i5. A very open sounding snare drum. In fact, there's only a little bit of moonjail on it. There is no additional dampening on it. And I also play rim shots, which also makes the drum sing. Then we have the snare bottom, the Biodynamic TG57. Then we have tom 1, a Audix D4. These toms were tuned very low. Let's listen to the floor tom, where I had the Audix D6, which normally is used for kick drum, but if you put it on toms, the toms sound awesome straight out of the preamp. Unfortunately, the D6 is a quite heavy mic and these little Audix mic clamps do not support the weight of a D6. So the mic fell on the drum head, but I got a little trick for that. We will take a look at that afterwards while we are editing. Then the drums overhead. Oh, I have already bent them left and right. So these are the T-Bone RB500 ribbon microphones. You can see it was just too much for the guitar. It fell down. Then we have a hi-hat microphone, which is also used for the stack. This is a Rode NT5 under the hi-hat, right about here. So it picks up also the stack. And we have two room mics. I will bend them now left and right. They were outside the room in the hallway. It was a Neumann SM69 stereo microphone in Bloomline configuration. And all together without the click. Now, before we start editing, let me tell you about two ways of editing in Reaper. The first is kinda automatic, I would say. I will show you a custom action that I have created so you can edit really fast in Reaper. The problem with it is that it's not very precise, so the hits are very precise on the grid itself. But of course, there are some mistakes that Reaper does while making this automatic editing, so you have to go over it manually nevertheless. And the second way is to just edit it manually, go through the whole recording and edit it note by note. I have to say, for me personally, it depends on which method I'm using. Sometimes I'm using the automatic mode, which is quite fast, but you have to adjust it anyways. And sometimes I really do it note by note manually. So let's start with the automatic editing in Reaper. What I do is I take the kick in and the snare top mic, duplicate them, put them on top, create a folder track, put them in there, bend them left and right, call this trigger track, and I will put a transient designer on it. Attack all the way to the top, limit is on, that's also fine. And now let's listen to just this trigger track, it will sound extreme. Now I will make a render of this track, delete the folder track, and now I'm also adding this trigger track to the group. So now if I'm making changes to this trigger track, it applies to all drum tracks. So why am I creating this trigger track? Well, this trigger track has a very clear transient, as you can see here. So now we select the trigger track, hit D to open the dynamic split items tab. This is to split the items into single items at every transient. You can see also that Reaper puts a blue line everywhere that it detected a transient, and that is also the reason why we created this trigger track, because now this function works better if you have a clear transient. That's why we put the transient designer and put the tag all the way up. So split points at transient. You could also select the minimum slide length and the minimum silence length. These are just options that I messed around with and I always leave them like that. Action to perform, split selected and grouped items, because we don't want to split just the trigger track but the whole drum recording. So now we hit split and you can see that we have items for every single hit where Reaper found a transient. Now that we have single items for every single hit, we can quantize them. And for that I made a custom action in Reaper. Quantize and fill gaps. If we take a look what this custom function does. So it quantizes the item start to the grid, keeps the length, selects the previous item with keeping the current selection. So basically, if I select an item and run this action, it will quantize the start to the grid like that. then select the previous item, selects all the group, and then it fills the gap between selected items. So if we take a look, I will redo this and we will run this custom action with just these two items. What you have to, one really important thing when you do this automatic drum editing and quantization, you have to choose the correct grid. So right now it is a quarter note. I will change it to quarter note, and now, for example, I selected these two hits. And now if I run my custom action to quantize and fill the gaps, so Command Option Q, it has now put this and this hit exactly on the grid. Now before I run this, let's listen once again to the recording with the click on, so that you can hear that I was not always perfectly in time. Okay, and now let's quantize the recording. You could select the whole recording at once and select all of it, but I recommend to do it step by step. And you have also to remember that we have created a trigger track with just the kick and snare. So at the moment, Reaper will do this automatic editing just for kick and snare. If there is a fill with toms, you have to do it manually. You could add also the toms to this trigger track, but I would recommend to do that then manually, because otherwise, if you have the toms also in this trigger track, this automatic way doesn't work as well. Okay, so now let's go ahead with this first section. I will select all of it. The minimum subdivision for this section is quarter note, so I leave this at quarter note. And now I will hit Command Q and we will listen to it once again. Perfect, now we have a perfectly aligned drum recording. Now we could go ahead and do the same for the whole recording. But as I told you, you have to do some manual changes nevertheless. For example, this first hit is way too late, so I will move it forward by clicking Alt, and now also this first one is perfectly on the grid. Normally I'm muting the overhead and the room mics while I'm editing drums. It could be that also some cymbals are out of time, but I will correct it when I make the final quality control of the editing, so to speak. Here you can hear some editing artifacts because the hit was too late, because my playing was not good enough, but don't worry, we will fix this and you won't hear this in the mix. So now you could go ahead and select the next part, Command Option Q, and it is edited. So also this part gets quantized. And here you can see that we have a 16 note fill. Reaper hasn't detected the second hit, but let's make this cut on our own. So now we'll go ahead and edit the whole recording automatically. Here we have a 16 note fill, so I will set the grid to 16th note. Let's unmute the hi-hat because we have a stack also here. Here, for example, you can hear that the drum distorts because the mic fell on the drum head. What I would do here is I deselect item grouping, delete this section from the Tom 2 track and go over to my samples. Then I would choose 2 hits which could be good for this fill. And I will just copy 2 hits and copy them over to the fill. And now you can't hear anymore that during the actual recording the mic fell on the drum head. Let's take a closer look at the kick. Let's re-enable item grouping. Also here you can see that I have played only one kick drum, but there should be a second one. This one should go over here. And now we have a second hit. I will make this a little bit quieter in the close mics just to make it more realistic. Okay, let's go ahead with the editing. Again, 8-note grid. Select the next section. Custom action. Boom. Here you can hear that the hi-hat is messing things up a little bit. So let's edit that manually. And now here we have the fast, and here we have 16th note fill on the snare. Then again, let's quantize this. And I will do each single hit manually. Then again, 8-note grid, select the next section, quantize, listen to it. Okay, so now I have edited half the song automatically, and now let's take a look at manual editing in Reaper. For that, I will delete all of this and will again pull this up so I have the actual recording that I have done. So how does manual editing work? Well, you just cut the recording and slide it over to the correct position. This one looks okay. Here we are a bit late. Sounds fine. And you do it like that for the whole recording. So doing it automatically may be faster, but as you have to do a lot of manual work anyways, you could also just do it manually straight away. Maybe it takes more time, but you are sure that everything is edited properly. Also, if you are doing it manually, you can decide if you want it to be 100% on the grid or if you want to make just slighter adjustments so that it's closer to the grid. As of course, Reaper just put it 100% on the grid. But if I do it manually, I can edit the drums a little looser. Here is another trick. For example, here the kick hit was way too early, and if I edit it back, it sounds kind of weird. What you can try there is you move the start of the kick hit very close, and now you make here another cut and you time stretch just the ring out of the snare. It's not perfect, but it's better as before. So here I play completely the wrong rhythm. So what I will do here is I will take this part from another take. Over here I have the first take that I have recorded. So I will delete it from the second take. Search for this part over here. It's this one. I will copy this and put this over here. Now, what you have to be careful when you're doing things like that is the gain, because I have normalized the second take but not the first take. This was an error of mine. I should have selected all the takes at once and normalized them all together, but yeah, I forgot it, so now I have to do it manually. So here we have 11.1. Okay, and now I can edit this one. Here the fill starts, so we have here. And now I have the correct groove and nobody will notice that there is another take. As you heard, there is a seamless transition between the takes. Okay, so this was the first pass of editing. The first part was automatic, now the second part was manual. And I have to admit, I should have rehearsed a bit more. This wasn't the best drum performance, so there was a lot of editing. And now I will listen to the whole recording again and make some final adjustments. I'm sure I have to make some more edits on the hi-hat. And for now I had muted the overheads and the hi-hat and the room mics. Now for the final listening of the edits, I will unmute all of them and make a rough balance while I'm listening to the recording. I will mute the trigger track. And we can hear immediately the first snare hit sounds weird. So again, we will do the trick with the time stretch. Still not perfect, but much better. And within the mix it will work. Honestly, this wasn't my best drum performance, but I have to deal with it now. What I could also do, for example, for this snare signals, I could delete these two and grab them from my samples over here. Let's take this one, copy and insert over here. And boom, we have a clear snare hit. Much better. Here I missed the hi-hat hit, so I will delete this one and take it again from the samples. Let's take this one, copy it. So now I've controlled the whole drum recording and the editing. And yeah, as I said earlier, I could have played this better. Maybe I should have taken some more takes so that I can take some bad parts from other takes. But for this demonstration, I think it works fine. Hi, it's Stefan here from the future. While I was editing this video for YouTube, I have noticed that I forgot an awesome trick that you can use to get even better drum editing results. So let's jump back into Reaper and I will show you what I forgot. So when editing drums, you can take advantage of the fact that drummers play the same groove many times during a whole song. So if the drummer messes up a section while recording, you just look for the same drum pattern in another section of the song. So let's take a look at this section here. If I play it, you can hear that there's some strange editing artifact. This is because I played this kick hit way too early. You can see it here. If I move the crossover, there is a flam. But if I remove the flam, there is this strange editing artifact. So what can we do? We could try to get rid of this flam and time stretch the decay of the snare hit. So we just look for the same rhythm in another section of the song. In this case, we are looking for a snare hit with a kick hit, a 16th note afterwards. And a very important thing about this particular snare hit is that there is still a crash ringing out from the one of this measure. If we would take a snare hit without a crash fading out, it would sound weird. So let's search for this exact pattern in another section. Here we have the exact same groove with also a crash ringing out. So we will copy this beat, get rid of this one, paste in here, time align it, make the fades, and there we go. It is still not perfect, but much better as before. And the drum pattern doesn't have to be perfectly the same. Let's listen to this example. Here we have 2 16th note and 1 16th note before and after the snare hit. And it sounds kind of weird. And 2 beats ahead we have also a snare hit, but the kick a 8th note before and after the snare. Let's try to use it anyways. Copy it over. Adjust the fades. And as you can hear, it sounds fantastic. So now before I start mixing these tracks, I would consolidate them. But before I do that, I will save a copy of this project with all the separate editing items, because if I then later on see that I did some bad editing, I can go back to this project and make the adjustments. So I will save this as drums edited. And then open again the main project. Here we go. Now we can also get rid of this trigger track. Now we select all of them, hit plus in Reaper. So there we have it. Now you have seen how I recorded and edited this drum cover of Bring Me the Horizon, and you have also learned how you can edit drums in Reaper. In the next video we will see how I mix these edited recordings. And also don't forget to check out the 3 videos with the final results. I have released 3 versions of this drum cover of Bring Me the Horizon. The first one is 100% real drums, the second one is only programmed drums, and the last one is a combination of both. Real drum recording augmented with drum samples. As always, thank you for watching and make sure to check out also the other videos of this series. Bye!